Alrighty, so today we are going to look at the other team that got eliminated in the conference final, and that, of course, is the Seattle Sounders. And despite the fact that the Sounders fell short in terms of making the MLS Cup, you kind of get a sense that it feels like this team is back, being a threat once again in the Western Conference. And as I mentioned before, that seems like it's bad news for the rest of the West, and in a way for the rest of the league as well, because the Sounders have been so dominant for a decade long, going all the way back when they came into the league, all the way into the early 2020s as well. But there's no doubt that this team did had a bit of a down period, but now it seems like they're back to being a threat, and especially they were probably the closest team in terms of knocking out the Galaxy in terms of winning MLS Cup. And I'll talk about why that, of course, is the case in just a bit. But in terms of this season, they finished with a 16-9 record and finished with 57 points. They scored 51 goals this season, which definitely is a bit high compared to what they were in the beginning of the season. Because remember, in the beginning of the season, this team just simply cannot score from open plays. Like most of the goals that they've been relying has been from the penalty spot, but they eventually figured things out. Their attack started to get going in the second half of the season, and as I'll also mention in a bit, that's why they really started to become a threat once again in the second half of the season. They only conceded 35 goals this season, which is the fewest that any team has conceded in the league, which just kind of shows you how good this defense is for the Sounders. This defense for the Sounders has been good for the past couple of years now, and they have a goal differential of plus 16. They finished fourth in the Western Conference. I know for once they didn't actually finish second in the Western Conference. It feels like every single season either the Sounders finish second or they're probably not going to make it to the playoffs. And this season they did make it to the playoffs. I mean, this is the first time they actually finished lower than second position, besides the time when they miss out on the playoffs for the first time in franchise history in 2022. Probably going all the way back to 2017 or 2016. That is when they finished fourth place. This team, again, for whatever reason, they always finish second in the Western Conference. But unfortunately, they were eliminated by the LA Galaxy in the Western Conference final. And talk about that game. Oh boy, if only they didn't just give the ball away cheaply in their own half with 5 minutes to go. I mean, they played a perfect game in that game against the Galaxy. They really shut down that Galaxy attack, really neutralized them and frustrated them throughout the full 80 minutes. And they themselves also had a couple of chances to go ahead. And overall, they were playing a perfect road game, a game very similar to what they did against LAFC, really shutting down their opponent attack. And as the old saying goes, in the playoffs, it's a game of inches, and especially in a big match like we saw in the Western Conference final, uh, margin are definitely fine, and unfortunately the Sounders make that one crucial mistake, and that turns out to be costly in terms of their chances of making back to MLS Cup. Now, looking at the last five seasons, in 2023, they finished with a second position with 14, 11, and 9 record and finished with 53 points, but they lose to LAFC in the second round. This was during a time when the Sounders simply cannot beat AFC until they finally end that narrative this playoff round. In 2022, easily the worst year that the Sounders team has had. 11th place finish with 12-5 and 17 record, finished with 41 points. It's the first time that they did not make it to the playoff and ended that streak where they made it to a playoff every single season since their expansion year, and to this day, still the only year that the Sounders did not make it to the playoffs since they entered the league in 2009. In 2021, they finished second with a 17-9-8 record and finished with 60 points, but they lost to RSL in the first round. And again, I talk about how this team kind of suffer a bit of downturn. It's mostly in the playoffs. I mean, this team, whenever they make it to the playoffs, they're gonna make a deep run in the playoffs. But the last couple of years, it just haven't really quite happened until this year, that is. In 2020, they finished in second with an 11-6-5 record and finished with 39 points. And they made it to MLS Cup once again, looking to defend their crown, but unfortunately lose to the Columbus Crew. And that was a game where I mentioned how, despite the fact that the Columbus Crew were not only injured to hell, but also have a bunch of players on COVID protocol. There's the reason why you have to play the game. Even though the Sounders were heavily favorites in that game. You just gotta play the game and see what happens. And yeah, it turns out that they found out that this Columbus team was still very decent, and they also found out a guy named Aiden Morris turns out to be really good for the Columbus Crew. That was really kind of his breakout game alongside with Lucas Arian. And then in 2019, we know they won MLS Cup. It's the last time that they won an MLS Cup. And again, with the dominant that the Sounders team has had throughout their time in MLS, it's hard to believe this team have only won two MLS Cup. This team probably could have won more in terms of MLS Cup, but they did win this one against TFC. This was kind of the trilogy of MLS Cup that we see the Sounders play again. Toronto pretty much 3 out of the 4 year. I'm pretty sure people are kind of glad that they don't see that matchup again because it was kind of a little bit tiresome seeing that matchup free time in 4 years. And I know for sure we will definitely not see that matchup for a very long time. And this is not a dig on Toronto FC. See, but simply they are probably not going to be anywhere close to being back into that stage. Knowing I've already mentioned about TFC of them going for a deep rebuild. But yeah, in that season they finished second with a 16-8-10 record and finished with 56 points. Top goal scorer of this team, it's Jordan Morris with 14 goals this season. He really took over that number 9 spot, and just once again shows you how good of a quality he is. Then you got Albert Rusnak with 10 goals apiece, followed by Raul Ruidiaz, who's no longer with this team, but he also contributed 8 goals in his final season for the Sounders. Then you got Paul Vrobrock, that kind of really came out of nowhere, a very unknown kid that came out of nowhere, got some playing time, and really made the most of it with 5 goals. And then you also have Jackson Reagan rounds up the top 5 with the top goal scorer list with 3 goals. Yeah, the Sounders team, they don't really have a lot of guys that I would say that contribute a lot of goals. Most of the goals have came from both Morris, Rusnak, and at times Rui Diaz as well. Top assists here, it's Albert Rusnak with 12 assists. And I said before, I don't think Rusnak has been worth the price it is. And I'm gonna still stand by this word. I mean, I know the numbers it looks really good, but I do think that overall, all he's still a little bit inconsistent at times, especially in the beginning of the season where he didn't look good at all. But he did finish with 12 assists, followed by Jordan Morris with 4 assists, Ober Vargas with 4 assists, Leo Chu with 2 assists, who's also no longer with this team. He got traded to FC Dallas as part of that big blockbuster move that they got from Jesus Ferreira this offseason. And then you also have Paul Rodrock to round up the top 5 with 2 assists. Best win of the season, it's got to be the 2-1 win against LAFC on the road. I mean, that was the win where only once again they get a big win to go deeper into the playoffs, but they finally slay the dragon and really defeat the narrative that they simply cannot defeat in the past couple of years. They simply cannot beat LAFC, and really in the last 10 matchups, LAFC have simply owned the Seattle Sounders in all of these matchups. But yeah, the Sounders, they finally defeated that narrative, and in some way kind of continue a little bit of the narrative of LAFC failing to show up in big games. And granted, LAFC will say they got lucky in that game. If it wasn't for a Maxime Cheno kind of bad moment, they probably wouldn't have come back in this game, the Sounders. But at the same time, you got to give a lot of credit to what the Sounders did in that game, and also LAFC being wasteful in front of goal that really contribute of why the Sounders were pretty much not only played a perfect road game, but really stole this game. And not to mention Stephen Fry seems like he's gone back to his playoff heroic form with some big save that he made in that game against LAFC. Worst loss of the season. This is not necessarily a loss, but I gotta say the 2-2 draw against the Quakes, that one is definitely considered to be one of the worst losses that they have. I mean, they have a lot of bad losses, especially in the first half of the season. I probably could have also gone with the 3-2 loss that they had against the Quakes on the road, but I'm going to go with the 2-2 draw against the Quakes, mainly because, again, for whatever reason, this team cannot beat the San Jose Earthquakes. It's crazy to see how, all these years the Quakes have always struggled against the Sounders, and how much they simply can't beat this team. And it's crazy to say that in the last 6 or 7 matchup, the script has kind of flipped. It's now the Quakes the one that simply has been dominating this kind of fixture. And again, for whatever reason, the Seattle Sounders, they cannot beat the San Jose Earthquakes, both at home and on the road as well. And that game was definitely discouraging because, again, this team looked like they were heading the high with the way how their second half of the season goes, and then they just didn't look good in that game against the Quakes, and especially kind of decided to thought that it was easy for them to cruise their way with 3 points with 2-1 win, only for them to concede a late goals and draw. that game. Now, in terms of average attendance, 30,754, which is good for third in the league. Again, the attendance wise, when you look at the Sounders, it's still good, but it's definitely not great compared to what we see a couple of years ago. And we talk about before with the problem with the Sounders when it comes to their attendance and why it suffered a big drop. Well, first of all, when you look at this team, I mean, it's not really as much as this team is a very good team to watch. It's not really a fun team to watch compared to previous year, and especially the players that they used to have back in the mid 2010s with the likes of Dempsey and Oberfee Martins and when they were really at the top of the game. Those were a very fun team to watch and very exciting team to watch as well, which is where it can also draw the crowd. But I also know that one of the big factors why the Sounders have suffered some attendance drop, ticket prices. Ticket prices has been really high going to Sounders game, and I can definitely assure that that's the case. Consider when I went to watch them play against Nashville on opening days, and even though I know it's opening weekend, usually tickets are more expensive than it was like $92, and I think that's considered even a steal as well. Sounders fans talk about how some of the tickets can go up to like $100 and so forth. And again, for a team that at times has been mediocre, Sounders fans are not going to really fork up for that. And there's been a lot of frustration with the fan base when it comes to the tickets prices being way too high right now. So we'll see whether or not if the Sounders can mitigate that. Again, when you have a competitive the team, you're going to definitely draw the crowd. And the Sounders have always had a competitive team, but it's all about not only having a competitive team, but also a fun team to watch. And if this team is not fun to watch, I'm pretty sure Seattle fans are not gonna really show up, especially fork up the amount that they have to watch every single Sounders game. Now, look at the MVP of this team. It's got to be Jordan Morris. I mean, what can you say about him that hasn't been said? He's been one of the most consistent number nine, a guy that it's hard to believe he suffered two torn ACL throughout his career, and he still looked the same every single time. Like we talk about players when they suffer torn ACL and they don't look like the same, let alone just suffer two different torn ACL. Whatever magic that Jordan Morris has when it comes to his recovery from torn ACL, that must be studied because it's almost like at times he gets even better when he came back on from a torn ACL. And again, another great season as well. And for a guy that I said a couple of years that I don't think he fits into that number nine role, he's surely have kind of proved me wrong because he's definitely looked very comfortable in that number nine spot throughout the season. Disappointment. It's got to be Pedro de la Vega. I mean, this one is a pretty easy one. And again, I know that he's been suffering a lot of injuries, which again, that should not be a big surprise because we knew this was gonna be the case. We knew that this was in some way kind of a gamble by the Sounders because again, the talent is definitely there with de la Vega. But it's about him if he can stay healthy, and that's been a problem throughout his young career. He has had trouble in terms of staying healthy, and because of that, and not to mention not really doing that much, contributing this team, especially the amount that the Sounders are paying him. Yeah, it's been a huge disappointment, and it's something that again the Sounders team might have a decision to make about Pedro de la Vega. They're hoping that he can really live up to the amount that they of course pay him and also stay healthy. But that again, it's a big if with a player that has numerous injury issues. Not even when we arrived with the Sounders, but even going back to his day with his native back in his native country and with his former team in Lanús, suffering a lot of injuries as well. Again, there's definitely going to be a concern that is it worth it to keep him around? Consider you're probably not going to be able to have him for more than 5 or 6 games before he went down with another injury. Now, in terms of young player to watch, this one was actually a bit of a tough one because the Sounders, surprisingly, they're starting to get some really good young players out there. But in the end, I'm still gonna go with Obar Vargas. So shout out to Paul Vrofrock and also Giorgio Menungu. Those two players has been really good, and both guys, of course, coming from the Sounders Academy, coming from the second team in Tacoma Defiance, doing very 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 well. But Obar Vargas, for a very long time, we've always said that he is a phenom and he can continue to get better as he goes along. It's hard to believe that he's still only 19 years old. I mean, it feels like he's been around the league for a while, and it's also a huge missed opportunity for the U.S. to not capitalize him that he decided to now join with L Tree. I mean, I respect his decision of going to L Tree, but still, just a big missed opportunity, I think, the U.S. consider how talented player he is, and he's definitely a guy that not only could be sold off for a big amount of money in the future, but could have been a big part of this national team in the future. That's how talented this guy has had, and I don't think it's gonna be long before he's gonna be snatched up by a team in Europe or even a team in Liga MX as well. Because apparently nowadays the trend is that you basically sell all the big uh, um the big sales has actually come more in Liga MX rather than in Europe, as we've seen in the past. So what went right for this team? Obviously, they found their groove in the second half of the season. You know, the second half of the season, they started to look like the Sounders of the old team that was very hard to beat when it comes to their defensive shape and scoring goals, and also going forward, they finally found some contribution both Morris and Rusnak as well. The defense again, rock solid as ever before. I mean, there's not much you need to say about this defense. It's been rock solid really for the past couple of years. Even in the year when they miss out on the playoffs, that defense I think was still considered one of the better defense in the league, and really for the past couple of years. And Brian Schmidt's a team, you know that this team has always had a very good defensive structure. And again, another great season for Jordan Morris and Albert Rusnak finally take a step forward. And I wonder whether if he took a step forward, mainly because he's in a contract year. I mean, I think he kind of finally took a step forward, knowing that yeah, this is pretty much it. If he does not perform, I'm pretty sure the Sounders are not going to re-sign him. And with him having a decent season, it kind of almost forced their hands of whether or not they decided to re-sign him to another contract. They decided to do so and remain him as a DP, and that again, as we'll talk about in a bit, it kind of forces an interesting situation when it comes to their DP situation in the near future as well. So what went wrong for the Sounders team? Well, not really much. I would say that went wrong with this team besides a very slow start to the season, and again, at times this team was a very boring to watch. And again, you know, Brian Schmetzer will say that well, this team can be boring and they could at time just grind their way with victories, but he doesn't care. I mean, as long as they get 3 points, that's all that matters. But as a neutral, if you want to watch the Sounders play, yeah, good luck in terms of trying to watch the play. I mean, you're gonna watch a good team, but don't expect to watch a team that is good and play some fun soccer. As the Sounders have pretty much not done the past couple of years, and especially under Brian Schmitz as well. I mean, I will say that Brian Schmitz, the team of the time that he took over this team going back to 2017. This team has never always been known for playing some fun soccer. I mean, besides a couple of years, I think maybe 2018 and 2019 where they play some fun soccer, this team has never been that kind of team. It's been kind of a team that at times grinded their way to victory and do just enough to get over the hump to get 3 points, and sometimes that's a good thing to have. And especially not to mention this is also a team that very rarely drop points late in games and let games get away, and that's something that again that is a huge bonus for a team, considering we've seen so many times where even the best of teams can have collapses, and this Sounders team rarely has those kind of moments. Though unfortunately they did kind of had that in the game against the Galaxy. Again, just they play a perfect road game. They really neutralized the Galaxy for 85 minutes, and then it was just undone by a defensive mistake. And that's all it took. I mean, against this great Galaxy attack, if you just give the ball away in one bad position and let them go on the transition, you're gonna get punished more times or not, and that's exactly what happened. And that's got to be something that's going to be on Sounders fans' mind, and things that definitely going to be on Brian Schmitz and this Sounders team mind all off seasons along. Because if they didn't make that mistake, they would have probably forced this game to extra time. And with the way that they have at times come up big in big moments, I wouldn't bet the fact that they would have sold that one against the Galaxy, and they would be the team that would be playing a home MLS Cup game against the New York Red Bulls instead of the Galaxy. So moving forward, looking at the Seattle Sounders side, so they spent money this off season. Again, you know, we know the Sounders team in the past, they tends to not really do that much in the winter transfer window. It's usually the summer transfer window that does that. Oh, ever since Gar Lofgren is no longer with this team and with Craig Wable being here, it's been a little bit different. They have definitely been a little bit more ambitious in the winter transfer window, though I think this offseason they've definitely been very ambitious. I mean, they bought a new number 9 in Jesus Ferreira from FC Dallas. They gave up a lot for him, I will say. But if he can get himself back to the form that he was a couple of years ago, and is kind of the reason why he was with the national team at times regularly. And they got a really decent player, and this also kind of helps them maybe move back Jordan Morris to the wing, which is kind of where he's more comfortable with, and put Jesus Ferreira in terms of that number 9 spot, which is I think that's a spot that he's more comfortable with. I think last season his production really dropped, not just because of the injuries that he suffered, but they really never put him in the right position, and there's no doubt that his numbers basically took a big of a drop as a result of it. Then of course they also got another decent attacking pieces in Paul Ariola. Again, this Sounders team feels like they're basically assembling a fringe U.S. men's national team roster. They might as well just pretty much do a January cupcake camp on U.S. men's national team roster going forward on the attack, because the likes of Jesus Ferreira, Paul Ariola, Jordan Morris, Christian Rotan, those are guys that used to be playing for the national team in the Gold Cup and even in cupcake camp in January. So it's kind of interesting that they're doing now, and that it'll be interesting to see whether that would be successful. I think it will be, because again, all those guys have been proven to be a great MLS talent. So again, going back to the DP situation, that's interesting for them to figure out. Consider again right now, what's kind of interesting. They say Jesus Ferreira is considered a DP, but when you look at what Craig Wable has mentioned, he says that both Morris, Rusnak, and there's another player that is also a DP. I think it was Pedro de la Vega, that is. All of those guys are considered to be designated players. So again, with the way that they have to keep under the free DP kind of rule, it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to wiggle out of that, especially with the way that Jordan Morris. I think right now, again, the website is doesn't label him as a DP player. If you look at the Sounders roster website, they label Jesus Ferreira as a designated player. But I think Morris, as Craig Wable mentioned, has a performance incentive that would make him a DP player. And when that happens, they need to figure out in terms of who they want to buy down in terms of the DP contract. There's been a lot of talk that Albert Rusnak was the one to do so, and especially I thought he was going to be the one. He was going to be the one that gets buy down to that TAM contract when they decide to restructure his contract, but that doesn't seem like it's the case. When they decide to negotiate his contract, he was going to be remain as a designated player spot. So this is kind of interesting for them to see how, of course, it will work for them in the future, trying to keep it within the rules of MLS, that is. And then the last thing I will say is that I expect this team to continue to be contending, especially if the attack can consistently perform next season. Again, we know their defense is stacked. They don't really need reinforcement in terms of that spot. We also know their midfield is very stacked. Especially they're going to get Joao Paulo back for another season. That should bode well for this team. It's just that whether or not the attack can consistently perform next season. Last season, there were times where the attack has been good, and then there were times where the attack was pretty bad and toothless as time. If they can get that work consistently, this team can easily be right up there against the likes of the 2LA team for those top spot in the Western Conference. And then I think also just a bonus thing that I want to mention in terms of moving forward. Again, how patient are they going to be with Pedro de la Vega? If he does not perform the way that they hope he is, they gotta let him go. Pro, probably, especially maybe free up a DP spot in the process, and also kind of get that DP situation sorted out in the future as well. Because again, Pedro de Vega has been a huge disappointment for the Sounders. They were really hoping that he was gonna be the Nico Ladero replacement, even though again they were not really like to like replacement, and he has came nowhere near that. And again, big part of it is because he just cannot stay healthy for more than 5 or 6 matches. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at the Seattle Sounders in the Moving Forward series episode. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and if you're a Sounders fan, who do you think is the MVP, disappointment, young player to watch, what went right, what went wrong, and most importantly, moving forward, how is this team going to look in the future? Tomorrow, we're going to start talking about teams that made it to MLS Cup, and we'll start by talking about the loser of MLS Cup, that is the New York Red Bulls. And then I think on Wednesday I'm going to wrap up the Moving Forward series talking about the defending MLS Cup champion, that is LA Galaxy. And then I think as soon as this weekend we're going to start season preview, because again the MLS season, it's hard to believe, but it's coming up soon. Like it's a little bit over a month before the first game of the season will begin. So want to make sure I knock that all out, and also getting ready to make videos related to the upcoming season as well. A lot of exciting time for me to plan all these video that is. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.